What would you do if you found out your own children were counting down the days until you died, just so they could split your money? This is not a movie plot. This is exactly what happened to me, and the morning my coffee maker shattered across the kitchen floor was the moment I stopped pretending I didn't see it. My youngest daughter, Chloe, just leaned against the counter, checking her nails, while her boyfriend Austin gave me a lazy shrug from the dining table, like broken glass on my kitchen floor was somehow my problem to deal with alone. These two had lived under my roof, rent-free, for 4 straight years. My house had become their personal hotel, and I had quietly become their walking ATM. But as I swept up that glass in complete silence, I smiled, because I knew something they didn't. In 11 days, an eviction notice I had already filed in secret would take full legal effect, and the county sheriff would be the one knocking on their door, not me. For decades, I built a successful chain of local hardware stores with nothing but hard work and sleepless nights. I gave my 2 daughters a comfortable life because I genuinely believed that generosity was how a good father showed love. When my oldest daughter, Maya, got married, I wrote a check for $65,000 without a second thought, wanting her wedding day to be perfect. Her husband, Julian, was a confident investment banker, the kind of son-in-law I thought I'd always hoped for. But exactly 1 month after that wedding, my quiet retirement was shattered by a single phone call from the wedding photographer. Her voice was shaking as she begged me to meet her alone at her studio, telling me not to say a word to Maya. Sitting in that dim editing room, my stomach dropped as she showed me photographs taken secretly on a private terrace, just 2 hours before the ceremony began. There on her screen was Julian, my new son-in-law, wrapped in a passionate embrace with a married woman who was definitely not my daughter. This wasn't cold feet. This wasn't a moment of weakness before the wedding. This was something far worse, and I didn't yet know how much worse it would get. The very next day, standing quietly in my own hallway, I overheard Chloe on speakerphone with Maya, and what I heard completely changed how I saw my own family. Maya was laughing, explaining that the entire marriage had been a calculated scam from the start, a plan to collect $60,000 in cash wedding gifts before filing for divorce. She bragged about how easy it would be to legally take half of Julian's assets, all while using me, her own father, as a distraction to fund a down payment on a luxury condo. I stood frozen in that hallway, finally understanding the truth. My children didn't see me as their father. They saw me as a resource, something to be slowly drained until nothing was left. Every tear Chloe had ever cried, every business idea Austin had pitched me, every warm hug Maya had given me, all of it had been a performance, carefully designed to keep my money flowing in their direction. The grief I felt in that moment hardened instantly into something cold and unshakable. The version of me that was gentle, forgiving, and endlessly accommodating was gone. The very next morning, I skipped my usual routine and drove straight to the office of an asset protection attorney named Harrison Vance, ready to fight back the only way that actually mattered. Harrison had decades of experience in family estate law, and the moment I showed him the photographs and told him what I'd overheard, he understood exactly how serious this was. He laid out a clear, aggressive plan, starting with 30-day eviction notices for Chloe and Austin, followed by setting up an irrevocable trust to protect everything I had spent my life building. What happened next, when I placed those eviction papers on my own living room table, would shatter the comfortable illusion my daughters had been living in and set off a chain of events none of them saw coming. That Friday evening, I calmly placed the official eviction envelopes on the living room coffee table, and the comfortable little world Chloe and Austin had built inside my house instantly collapsed into chaos. Austin stormed toward me, his face turning red, shouting that I was treating my own family like criminals. Chloe immediately switched into her familiar routine, crying uncontrollably, insisting that the stress of the situation was making her physically sick. I just looked at both of them with a strange, quiet calm, checked my watch, and reminded them that the legal clock was already running, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. Over the following 2 weeks, my daughters launched a coordinated campaign against me, switching back and forth between aggressive confrontation and hollow emotional pressure. Maya even staged an ambush disguised as a family dinner, showing up uninvited with a psychologist to question whether I was mentally fit to make my own decisions. When that pathetic attempt failed, I called everyone together for one final dinner of my own. This time, I was the one holding the cards. I slid the forensic photographs of Julian's affair across the table, right in front of Maya. As she stared at undeniable proof of her own husband's betrayal, I calmly repeated, word for word, the things she had said on speakerphone about scamming Julian and using me to fund her new condo. The room went completely silent, the kind of silence that comes when people realize they've been caught with nowhere left to hide. On the final morning of the eviction deadline, a sharp knock at the door signaled the end of Chloe and Austin's 4 years of free living. They scrambled to shove their belongings into garbage bags while a county deputy stood watching, and I stood at the doorway, arms crossed, offering absolutely no help. As their car finally pulled out of my driveway for the last time, a deep and long-forgotten sense of peace settled over my empty house. I had stopped pretending I didn't notice being used, and I chose real solitude over a version of family that looked a lot more like theft than love. The day after they left, the silence in my house felt less like loneliness and more like relief. I spent the whole morning deep cleaning every room, wiping away years of other people's mess and entitlement. Throwing out that last garbage bag felt like finally shedding a skin I'd been wearing far too long. For the first time in years, the air in my own living room felt clean, and the constant low-level anxiety that had followed me for years simply disappeared. A few days later, Harrison Vance called me into his downtown office to finalize everything. Standing by his window overlooking the skyline, I watched him stamp the official seal onto my new irrevocable trust. Every dollar, every property, every piece of the hardware store business I had built over decades was now locked safely away, where no one could touch it or manipulate it out of my hands. Signing that final page gave me a kind of relief I hadn't felt in years, the certainty that my life's work was finally protected. About a week later, the real consequences started catching up to my daughters. Divorce papers were officially filed between Maya and Julian. With the photographs now out in the open, the two of them turned on each other completely, fighting publicly over the wreckage of a marriage that had never been real to begin with. Because a judge found out their intentions had been fraudulent from the start, both of them were ordered to return every dollar of the cash wedding gifts to the guests who had given them. They spent what savings they had left on lawyers, only to walk away with nothing but debt and bitterness. Not long after, Maya reached out again, this time claiming she had finally left Austin behind, hoping her sudden single status might soften me up enough to open my wallet again. I listened to her voice message without shedding a single tear, recognizing the exact same manipulation I had heard for years. I didn't send an angry reply, I simply deleted the message and blocked her number for good, and what happened after that surprised even me. I refused to fund anyone's dependency ever again, and instead of anger, what I felt afterward was something closer to freedom. As the late August sun started to set one evening, I found myself sitting on my terrace, tuning a brand new acoustic guitar I had recently bought for myself. For 40 years, I had made excuse after excuse about being too busy for hobbies, too consumed by the endless demands of a family that never seemed satisfied no matter how much I gave. Now, with my schedule finally belonging to no one but me, I spent my afternoons learning new chords and volunteering my building skills at the local senior center. Being able to choose how I spent my own days felt like a quiet kind of freedom, and it proved something important, that life doesn't end when you finally walk away from people who only ever loved what you could give them. The last piece of my healing came when I met the wedding photographer, Carolyn, for coffee at a small cafe near her studio. Sitting across from her, I thanked her for the courage it took to hand me those photographs a month earlier, knowing the chaos it might cause. She admitted she had worried about disrupting a family, but she said she believed an honest man deserved to know the truth. Our conversation felt completely different from every conversation I'd had with my daughters in years. There was no hidden agenda, no financial angle, just two people talking honestly, and it reminded me what a genuine, respectful human connection actually feels like. Looking out over the hills near my home that evening, I finally understood something important. Justice was never about revenge, and it was never about trying to hurt the people who had hurt me. Real justice was about setting firm boundaries, protecting my own peace, and having the courage to say a clear, final no to people who only valued my wealth, not me. My daughters spent years treating my love like an unlimited resource, something they could withdraw from whenever they needed cash, comfort, or a place to stay. What they never understood was that real love comes with respect attached to it, and once that respect disappears, love alone isn't enough to hold a family together. I don't regret writing that $65,000 check for Maya's wedding, and I don't regret the years I spent supporting Chloe either. What I regret is waiting so long to notice that generosity without boundaries isn't kindness, It's an open door for people to walk through and take whatever they want. Building that irrevocable trust wasn't about punishing my daughters. It was about protecting everything I had spent decades building with my own two hands, so that it could never be manipulated, divided, or stolen out from under me while I was still alive to see it happen. If there's one thing I want you to take away from my story, it's this. Love your children, support them when they truly need it, but never let generosity become something people expect instead of something they appreciate. Pay attention to how people treat you when they think you're not paying attention at all, because that's usually when the truth comes out. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt used by people who were supposed to love you unconditionally, let me know in the comments below. Have you ever had to protect yourself from your own family? I want to hear your story. Hit that like button if you believe in setting boundaries. Subscribe if you want more real stories about family, betrayal, and reclaiming your peace, and I'll see you in the next one.